My name is Matthew Shaw. I run the Bible Protector Ministry. Today we're talking about starting from Scripture versus presupposition, or mere presupposition. Okay, so what do we do? Start from Scripture. For what saith the Scripture? Romans 4 verse 3. Nevertheless, what saith the Scripture? Galatians 4 verse 30. Have you not read? Matthew chapter 12 verse 3. Or have you not read in the law? Matthew chapter 12 verse 5. So you're starting from the Bible. And you can say it again. And have you not read this Scripture? And he talks Mark chapter 12 verse 10 and 11. Okay, Dr. James White, he made a presentation on YouTube about ecclesiastical text issues. That was in July 2015. And what I want to do is just, I'm not going to talk in all the detail about, there's obviously different approaches how you view the transmission of Scripture through time. He was trying to make out basically that ultimately that if you have a King James Bible only type of position, you're coming under the category of an ecclesiastical text position. And I think that's a wrong type of portraying of the circumstance, because a real ecclesiastical text position, to take it to the extreme, would be like saying the Roman Catholics have said, this is the correct Bible, use that, no question asked, you just accept it on that authority. The King James Bible position is actually different to that. It says, whilst God has supplied his Scripture through time and through the church, obviously learned and godly men have looked at what has been supplied and made sure that any inaccuracies should be dealt with in the transmission process. But it's a believing view because it believes that God has given us his word, and it believes that we can know the truth. So it believes basically that issues are and have been resolved or are resolvable. Now, as a King James Bible only believer, we're believing that the King James Bible is the resolution to those issues, and that God has not failed but has supplied it for all. Whereas the different view of the modern version proponent, such as James White, they might come under the category of critical eclectic text position, or other such positions that might come under that broad category or related categories. Some take a neutral text position, whatever. But what that means is they're looking analytically at available manuscripts and making decisions based on that, on the assumption that you can't resolve all the textual issues. That's what they're assuming. And because of that assumption, that mere presupposition, or presupposition about, that we just got to try and find out but we can't actually know, that's very different to believing and knowing that God has supplied the truth in full. Okay, so these are some points that he made, but I don't want to go into great detail, except that he thinks that if you have a King James Bible only position and you say, I believe God has supplied me the Scripture, which is not like the Vulgate kind of position, but is a believing position based on the Reformation work and so on. He calls that, and it's a quote, he says, the end of meaningful Christian apologetic interaction defense. And what he means by that is you can't engage on the level of textual criticism, arguments and so forth once you say, I believe God has got it to me through time, and believers in the church have it. Because he's thinking that in order for it to be, the Bible to be analysed as far as its textual transmission, you have to go through this great mental process of being able to explain which readings are the most likely and all this and this and that. And then when you come to the atheists or unbelievers, and they say, now, what about this or what about that, that James White thinks he can try to defend the Scripture, except he won't be defending 1 John chapter 5 verse 7 as Scripture to them. He'll be agreeing with them that, yes, it seems unlikely because of these reasons that verse is in Scripture. And we're here talking about, is it a naturalistic view on Bible transmission, or is it a providential view on God's provision by preservation of his word through time, and that there's been a gathering from what God has supplied, or what has been supplied through the scattering process, which God has ensured that the word was never lost. And this is the whole point. Now he calls what he thinks the King James Bible position as being thoroughly inconsistent with Reformed suppositions. He's talking there about his Calvinistic view. So he's using a sectarian view, which, by the way, seems a bit inconsistent, since earlier Calvinists were promoting and using the received text, so that doesn't even make sense. But he thinks that to go against the modern version way, to go to the King James Bible and rely on that, is inconsistent with Reformed suppositions. In fact, it's entirely in line with it to stick with the King James Bible. He accuses those who stand for the King James Bible. He uses very couched and coded euphemistic type of language. He says, shares assumptions with those which are against sola scriptura, vaguely implying Romanish or even cultic similarity. In other words, what he's saying is, if you believe the King James Bible is true and right, you're basically like those people who said that the Vulgate was inspired or something. And that's a very, he indirectly is making that assertion, but that's a very incorrect statement to make. So, for more information generally on the subject of that we could start from Scripture and how we look at it, you can, of course, look at the Bible Protector website on there, and I'm just making available that there's the book there you can download called Multiple Fulfillments of Bible Prophecy, and there's many other booklets and lots of other information on the Bible Protector website. God bless.